Captain Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room of the Galactic cruiser Starfall, staring at the holographic display that showed a planet covered in swirling red clouds. The planet looked angry, like a wound in space itself. Around him, officers from different alien species shifted nervously in their seats. Their faces showed the same expression he had seen on people right before they delivered bad news. Admiral Vextar, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, cleared his throat. The sound echoed strangely through his translation device. "Captain Morrison, the Galactic Defense Council has a mission for your team. We need you to remove the Void Reapers from Xerion 7. Jake nodded and looked at the spinning planet again. "Okay, what's the catch?" The alien officers around the table looked at each other. A few of them made soft clicking sounds, which Jake had learned meant they were uncomfortable. Admiral Vexitar's 4 hands moved in what looked like nervous gestures. "The catch, Captain, is that Xerion 7 is the most dangerous planet in this sector. No military force has ever lasted more than 6 hours on its surface. The Taxan Empire lost an entire battalion there last year. The Centauri sent their best Special Forces unit 3 months ago. We found their equipment scattered across 50 square miles." Lieutenant Amy Carter, Jake's tactical officer, leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who never backed down from a challenge. "What exactly makes it so dangerous?" A reptilian officer named General Slicks answered. His voice hissed through the translator. "The atmosphere is acidic enough to eat through our best armor in hours. The wildlife is aggressive and extremely deadly. The temperature changes by 100 degrees between day and night. The ground itself shifts and moves without warning. Plants release toxic gases. The storms can strip flesh from bone." Amy nodded and made notes on her tablet. "Sounds like fun." The alien stared at her. Admiral Vextar's large eyes blinked slowly. "Lieutenant Carter, I do not think you understand. This planet has killed thousands of soldiers. The Void Reapers chose it as their base precisely because no one can survive there long enough to attack them." Jake studied the planet data scrolling across his screen. Xerion 7 looked like every survival expert's nightmare rolled into one ball of rock and poison. The Void Reapers were smart to hide there. They were the galaxy's most wanted criminals, responsible for destroying entire trade routes and murdering civilians by the thousands. If they felt safe on Xerion 7, the planet had to be as bad as the aliens claimed. "How long do we have to complete the mission?" Jake asked. "Previous attempts lasted 6 hours maximum before complete mission failure," General Slicks replied. "We estimate your team has perhaps 4 hours before the environment becomes completely unsurvivable, even with your best equipment." Staff Sergeant Rick Williams, a broad-shouldered man from Texas, raised his hand. "Sir, are we talking about a quick in-and-out operation, or do we need to set up for a longer stay?" Admiral Vextar looked confused. "Sergeant Williams, did you not hear what we just explained? This planet kills everything that lands on it. You will not be setting up for a longer stay because you will not survive long enough for a longer stay." Rick grinned. "So we should pack the good camping gear then?" The alien officers began making more clicking sounds. Some of them started talking to each other in their own languages. Jake caught fragments through the translators. Words like insane and death wish kept coming up. Corporal Lisa Hayes, the team's communication specialist, pulled out a small notebook and started writing. "Okay, so acid rain, hostile wildlife, extreme temperatures, unstable ground, and toxic plants. Should I bring the heavy-duty tent or will the standard one work?" An octopus-like alien named Commander Bluetack raised several tentacles in what might have been surprise. "Corporal Hayes, you are discussing camping equipment for a suicide mission." Lisa looked up from her notes. "Well, we have to sleep somewhere, right? And if it's going to be rough conditions, we need to pack accordingly." Jake watched the aliens exchange more worried glances. He had worked with galactic species for 3 years now, and he had learned that they often overestimated dangers that humans found manageable. But Xerion 7 did sound genuinely terrible. 3 different alien military forces had failed completely. The data showed environmental conditions that would challenge even experienced human soldiers. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" Amy asked. "You leave tomorrow," Admiral Vexitar replied. The Void Reapers are using Zerion 7 to plan their next major attack. Our intelligence suggests they will move within the week. This is our only chance to stop them. Amy nodded. That works. We'll need tonight to prep our gear and review the environmental data. Lieutenant Carter, Admiral Vextar said slowly, I want to be clear about something. The Galactic Defense Council is not expecting you to succeed. We are sending you because the situation is desperate, and humans are known for unusual approaches to impossible problems. But we do not expect you to return. The room fell silent. Jake looked around at his team. Rick was still grinning. Lisa was making more notes about equipment. Amy was studying the planet data with the same focused expression she used when planning any other mission. Medic Grace Miller was reading about the local wildlife with what looked like professional interest. Admiral, Jake said, I appreciate your honesty, but my team has handled difficult environments before. Captain Morrison, General Slicks interrupted, with respect, you have never handled anything like Zerion 7. Your planet Earth has dangerous places, yes, but Zerion 7 is actively trying to kill everything that sets foot on it. The very air is poison. The animals are monsters. The weather is violent beyond anything in your experience. Engineer Tony Baker, a quiet man who usually only spoke when directly asked, raised his hand. Sir, will we have access to local materials for improvised equipment, or should we bring everything we need? The alien started clicking again. Admiral Vextar's voice became higher-pitched. Mr. Baker, there are no local materials. There is only death. Acid death, poison death, being eaten alive death, and falling into unstable ground death. Tony nodded, thoughtfully. Okay, so we pack heavy. Got it. Jake stood up and looked at his team. These were good people, experienced soldiers who had served together for 2 years. They had handled hostile environments, dangerous wildlife, and extreme weather on a dozen different worlds. But he had to admit that Zerion 7 sounded worse than anything they had faced before. All right, people, he said. We have 18 hours to prepare for what might be the most challenging mission we've ever undertaken. Questions? Scout Danny. Foster raised his hand. Sir, do we know if the local water is drinkable, or should we plan to bring all our own? Admiral Vextar made a sound like a deflating balloon. The local water is pure acid. Danny made a note. Okay, so we definitely bring our own. Thanks. As the briefing ended and the humans filed out to begin their preparations, Jake heard the aliens talking among themselves. The translations were fragmentary, but he caught enough to understand their concerns. They were already planning the humans' memorial service. Jake had to admit they might be right. Zerion 7 sounded like hell with weather. But his team seemed to be treating it like just another camping trip with unusually high stakes. The transport ship dropped Jake Morrison's team on Zerion 7 at dawn, though dawn on this planet meant the sky changed from black to dark red. The pilot, a nervous Centauri named Kexalon, wished them luck in a voice that sounded like he was saying goodbye to the dead. The ship lifted off quickly, leaving the 8 humans standing on a rocky ledge surrounded by twisted metal trees and the sound of something growling in the distance. Within 10 minutes, the planet started trying to kill them. The first drops of acid rain began falling as Amy Carter checked her scanner readings. The droplets hissed when they hit the ground, leaving small smoking holes in the rock. Well, that's not good, she said, pulling up her hood. Rick Williams looked up at the red. Clouds gathering overhead. Looks like a storm coming. Better find shelter. Before anyone could move, the ground beneath Danny Foster's feet started to shift. He jumped back just as a section of rocky ledge crumbled into a pit filled with something that bubbled and steamed. Unstable ground, just like they said, Danny reported. We need to test every step. That was when the local wildlife decided to introduce itself. The creature that came charging out of the metal forest looked like someone had crossed a bear with a giant spider and then given it too many teeth. It stood 8 feet tall, had 6 legs, and made a sound like a chainsaw mixed with a scream. Its skin looked thick enough to stop bullets, and acid rain rolled off its back without leaving marks. Lisa Hayes reached for her weapon, but Grace Miller grabbed her arm. Wait, Grace said, watching the creature carefully. Look at its posture. It's not attacking, it's warning us. The monster stopped 20 feet away and reared up on its back legs, showing its full height. It roared again, then took 3 steps backward. It repeated this performance twice more. It's territorial, Grace said. Like a grizzly bear. It doesn't want to fight us. It just wants us to know this is its space. Tony Baker slowly pulled out a ration bar and tossed it to the left, away from the direction they needed to go. The creature followed the food, sniffed it, then picked it up and carried it back into the forest. The team could hear it crunching happily in the distance. Well, that was easier than expected, Jake said. The acid rain was getting heavier. Amy checked her equipment readings and frowned. Our standard gear is holding up okay, but this stuff will eat through it eventually. We need real shelter. Tony looked around at the twisted landscape. The metal trees were actually some kind of mineral formation that had grown into tree-like shapes. The ground was a mix of rock, sand, and patches of something that glowed faintly, green. In the distance, they could see the pirate fortress built into the side of a mountain, its lights flickering through the red atmosphere. I can work with this, Tony said. He started gathering pieces of fallen mineral branches and chunks of the glowing rock. The local materials are actually pretty useful. This green stuff seems to repel the acid rain. While Tony worked on building a shelter, Danny scouted ahead to find a safe path through the shifting ground. He moved carefully, testing each step before putting his full weight down. The unstable areas had a slightly different color and texture than the solid rock. Within an hour, he had marked a safe route toward the fortress using small stones as markers. Grace was cataloging the local wildlife. Besides the bear spider, she had spotted several smaller creatures that looked like armored cats, some flying things that resembled bats with too many wings, and something that might have been a snake if snakes were made of living metal. None of them seemed particularly interested in attacking humans who minded their own business. Most of these animals are just trying to survive in a harsh environment, Grace explained to the others. They're not monsters. They're just adapted to conditions that would kill most other life forms. The key is respecting their space and not acting like prey. Lisa had set up their communications equipment in the shelter Tony was building. The structure looked like a cross between a log cabin and a spaceship, built from mineral branches, glowing rocks, and pieces of their own equipment. It was ugly, but it worked. The acid rain rolled off the roof without causing damage. I'm getting some interesting readings from the pirate fortress, Lisa reported. Their shields are fluctuating. Looks like Zarian 7 is hard on their equipment too. Amy was studying the environmental data on her tablet. The temperature is going to drop 60 degrees when the sun sets. That's in about 4 hours. But with Tony's shelter and our cold weather gear, we should be fine. Rick had spent his time exploring the immediate area around their landing site. He found a stream of clean water running underground, several caves that could serve as backup shelters, and what looked like edible plants growing in protected spots between the rocks. This place reminds me of that camping trip we took in Alaska, Rick said as he rejoined the group. Remember, it rained for 3 days straight. Bears kept getting into our food and the ground was all muddy and unstable. That was a fun trip, Danny agreed. Though I think Alaska had fewer acid rainstorms. Yeah, but Alaska didn't have these cool, glowing rocks, Tony added, holding up a chunk of green mineral. This stuff is actually kind of beautiful. As evening approached, the team had established a comfortable base camp. Tony's shelter was weatherproof and warm. Grace had identified several safe water sources and mapped out the territories of the local animals. Danny had scouted multiple routes toward the pirate fortress. Amy had analyzed the environmental patterns and predicted the best times to move. Lisa had established secure communications with the Starfall and was monitoring pirate radio traffic. Rick started a small fire, using some of the local plants that burned cleanly despite the harsh conditions. The team gathered around it to share their evening meal and plan the next day's approach to the fortress. High above them in orbit, the alien crew of the Starfall watched their scanners in amazement. The human life signs were stable. Their equipment was functioning normally. Most surprisingly, their stress levels appeared to be actually decreasing. This is impossible, Admiral Vextar said to Captain Errol Talk, the ship's commander. The environmental conditions on the surface should have killed them 3 times over by now. Captain Irltalk checked the readings again. According to our sensors, they have constructed some kind of shelter. They appear to be comfortable. Meanwhile, in the pirate fortress, Commander Zrakth of the Void Reapers was staring at his own sensor displays. The human landing had been detected immediately. Of course, he had expected to watch them die within hours, like all the other military forces that had tried to attack his base. Instead, his monitors showed them setting up what looked like a permanent camp. "Sir," his lieutenant reported, "the humans have established a base approximately 12 kilometers from our position. They show no signs of environmental distress." Zrakth's reptilian features twisted into a frown. "That's impossible. This planet kills everything. How are they surviving?" "Unknown, sir, but they appear to be settling in for an extended stay." Back at the human camp, Jake was reviewing the day's progress with his team. They had successfully landed on the galaxy's most dangerous planet, survived their first day, built adequate shelter, mapped the local dangers, and established a secure base of operations. All in all, it had been a productive start to the mission. "Good work, everyone," Jake said. "Tomorrow we start moving toward the fortress. Get some rest." As the team settled in for the night, the sounds of Zarian 7 continued around them. Acid rain pattered on their roof. Strange creatures called to each other in the distance. The ground occasionally shifted and groaned. But inside their improvised shelter, the humans were warm, dry, and safe. To them, it was just another night camping in a challenging environment. To the rest of the galaxy, it was proof that humans were either incredibly brave or completely insane. On the second day, Jake Morrison's team began their move toward the pirate fortress. But their approach would have confused any military academy instructor in the galaxy. Instead of charging forward with weapons blazing or using advanced technology, to overcome obstacles, the humans moved through Zarian 7 like they were on an extended hiking trip, with a specific destination in mind. Kate Brooks, the team's sniper, had spent the early morning hours finding the perfect observation position. She climbed up through the twisted mineral formations until she reached a spot that gave her a clear view of the fortress, while keeping her hidden from its sensors. The position reminded her of a deer blind she had used back home in Montana, except this one was surrounded by acid-resistant rocks and strange glowing plants. From her perch, Kate could see the pirate guards moving around the fortress walls. They looked nervous and kept checking their environmental suits. Every few minutes, one of them would point at something in the distance and talk urgently into their communicator. Kate realized they were scared of the planet itself. "This is Kate," she whispered into her radio. "I have eyes on the target. The pirates look jumpy. Their equipment is having problems." Down below, Sam Torres was having the time of his life. The demolitions expert had discovered that Zarian 7's unstable geology made his job much easier than usual. Instead of bringing in heavy explosives, he could use the planet's own instability against the pirates. Sam found a section of ground near the fortress that was already cracked and weak. He placed small charges in just the right spots to make the cracks bigger when the ground shifted naturally. The next time Zarian 7 had one of its regular geological events, the pirates would find their main supply road blocked by what looked like a natural rock slide. "Sam here," he reported. "I've got a present ready for our friends, just waiting for the planet to help me deliver it." Danny Foster was mapping safe routes through the dangerous terrain between the human camp and the fortress. He moved like a ghost through the landscape, using skills learned during years of hunting and fishing in difficult terrain. The pirate's motion sensors never detected him because he understood how to move with the environment instead of fighting against it. Danny found that the armored cat creatures Grace had identified actually made excellent early warning systems. When the cats were calm and relaxed, the area was safe. When they became alert or nervous, it meant danger was approaching. By watching the cats, Danny could avoid the most dangerous parts of Zarian 7 without relying on electronic equipment that might fail. "Danny reporting," he said softly. "I've found 3 safe approaches to the fortress. The local wildlife is actually helping us stay undetected." Tony Baker had spent his morning studying the fortress itself. The pirates had built their base using advanced alien technology designed to withstand extreme environments. But Tony could see that Zerion 7 was slowly winning the battle against their machines. The acid rain was eating away at the fortress's outer walls despite their protective coating. The shields that were supposed to keep out hostile wildlife flickered and sparked every few minutes. Most importantly, Tony noticed that the pirates' air filtration system was working overtime to keep the toxic atmosphere out of their base. "Tony here," he said into his communicator. "Their life support systems are under major stress. If we can increase that stress just a little bit, they might have serious problems." While his team worked around the fortress, Jake stayed at base camp with Amy, Grace, and Lisa. They were monitoring pirate communications and tracking the effectiveness of their teammates' activities. "The pirates are reporting equipment failures every hour," Lisa said, listening to the intercepted radio traffic. "Their commander sounds increasingly worried." Grace was studying the behavior of the local wildlife near the fortress. "The animals are avoiding that area more than usual," she reported. "I think the pirates' activities are disrupting the natural ecosystem. The creatures are stressed and confused." Amy was analyzing the tactical situation. "The pirates chose this location because they thought the environment would protect them, but they don't understand how to work with the environment. They're fighting it instead of adapting to it." Inside the fortress, Commander Zrakth was indeed growing more worried by the hour. His environmental sensors showed the humans were still alive and apparently healthy after more than 24 hours on Zerion 7. Worse, they seemed to be moving closer to his base. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're detecting human activity in Sector 7. They appear to be camping." Zrakth stared at the monitor. The sensors showed what looked like a small campfire, and humans sitting around it sharing food. This was impossible. Sector 7 had atmospheric conditions that should have killed them instantly. "Are our sensors malfunctioning?" Zrakth demanded. "No, sir. We've run full diagnostics. The readings are accurate. The humans appear to be having some kind of meal in conditions that would be lethal to our species." That was when the first of Sam's traps activated. A section of the main supply road collapsed in what looked like a natural rock slide. The collapse blocked the path the pirates used to bring in food and equipment from their ships. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted, "we've lost the main supply route. Geological instability has blocked the road." Zrakth's clawed hands gripped his command chair. "How long until we can clear it?" "At least 12 hours, sir. Maybe longer. The ground is still shifting." An hour later, the fortress's air filtration system began working harder. Tony had found the external vents and introduced some of Zerion 7's native plants near the intake ports. The plants released spores that weren't dangerous to humans, but made the pirates' equipment work overtime to keep the air clean inside their base. "Sir," the engineering officer reported, "our air systems are operating at maximum capacity. If this continues, we'll have failures within 6 hours." Zrakth was beginning to understand that he was facing an enemy unlike anything he had encountered before. Most military forces tried to overcome Zerion 7 through superior technology and firepower, but the humans seemed to be using the planet itself as a weapon. "Where are they now?" he asked his sensor operator. "Still in Sector 7, sir. They appear to be setting up a more permanent camp." On the human side, Kate had spent the day watching the pirates become increasingly frantic. Through her scope, she could see them running back and forth, checking equipment, and having what looked like urgent meetings. Their commander kept pointing at various displays and making angry gestures. "Kate to base," she reported. "The pirates are definitely feeling the pressure. Their stress levels are going through the roof." "Copy that, Kate," Jake replied. "How are you doing up there?" "Not bad. Found some interesting birds that nest in these rock formations. They're actually kind of pretty when you get used to the extra wings." Danny had discovered that his presence near the fortress was making the local wildlife nervous, which in turn was affecting the pirates' perimeter sensors. The animals' unusual behavior was triggering false alarms throughout the fortress defense system. "Danny here, the pirates' security systems are going crazy. Every time a scared animal runs past their sensors, they think they're under attack." Sam's second trap activated at sunset. This one was more subtle. He had weakened the supports under one of the fortress's defensive weapon platforms. When the daily temperature change caused the metal to contract, the platform tilted at a dangerous angle, making its weapons unusable. Sam reporting. Their south defensive position is out of commission. Looks like metal fatigue caused by temperature stress. As night fell on their second day on Zarion 7, the human team had successfully disrupted the pirates' supply lines, compromised their life support systems, disabled part of their defenses, and created a state of constant stress and confusion inside the fortress. They had done all of this without firing a single shot or using any advanced technology. Commander Zarakth stood in his command center, watching damage reports scroll across his screens. His fortress, built to withstand direct military assault, was being slowly dismantled by what appeared to be environmental problems and equipment failures. But Zarakth was beginning to suspect these weren't random failures. Somehow, the humans had turned Zarion 7 itself into their ally. By the fourth day on Zarion 7, Commander Zarakth was ready to admit defeat. His fortress, which had withstood attacks from 3 different alien military forces, was falling apart around him. The supply routes were blocked, the life support systems were failing, half the defensive weapons were down, and his troops were terrified of an enemy they couldn't see or understand. "Sir," his communications officer said with panic in his voice, "the humans are moving again. They're heading directly toward us." Zarakth looked at the tactical display. 8 small dots were moving steadily through the dangerous terrain between their camp and the fortress. They moved in a pattern that made no sense to any military manual he had studied. Instead of advancing in formation or using cover tactically, they seemed to be walking along a hiking trail that somehow existed in the most hostile environment in the galaxy. "How is this possible?" Zarakth muttered. "They should be dead 50 times over." Jake Morrison led his team through the final approach to the pirate fortress. Danny had marked the safest path with small stone cairns, the same way hikers mark trails in national parks back on Earth. The team moved single file, each person following exactly in the footsteps of the person ahead. "Beautiful morning for a walk," Rick commented, looking up at the red sky where Zarion 7's twin suns were creating interesting light patterns through the acid clouds. "Could do without the smell, though," Lisa replied, adjusting her air filter. "Reminds me of that sulfur spring we camped near in Yellowstone." Kate had moved to a new position closer to the fortress. From her new perch, she could see the pirates running around inside their base like ants whose hill had been disturbed. Their movements showed complete panic and confusion. "Kate here," she reported. "The enemy is in full disarray. They're not even trying to fight back anymore. They're just trying to survive." Sam had saved his best work for last. During the night, he had carefully studied the fortress's main power generator. The pirates had built it to withstand direct attacks, but they hadn't considered the slow, steady pressure of Zarion 7's environment. Sam had found tiny cracks in the generator's housing where acid rain had been seeping in for months. All Sam had to do was widen those cracks slightly and let the planet do the rest. When the morning's acid rain began falling, it would flow directly into the generator's most sensitive components. Sam here. Their power grid is about to have a very bad day. Tony had been working on the fortress's communications array. The pirates had positioned it on the highest point of their base to get the best signal, but that also made it the most exposed to Zarion 7's harsh conditions. Tony didn't need to destroy it. He just needed to make it less reliable. Using techniques he had learned maintaining radio equipment during camping trips in bad weather, Tony introduced moisture and corrosive elements into the array's connections. Soon the pirates would find their communications cutting in and out at the worst possible moments. Tony reporting. Their ability to call for help is going to be very limited very soon. Grace had made an interesting discovery about the local wildlife. The creatures that lived around the fortress had learned to avoid the pirates' energy shields and defensive systems, but they weren't avoiding the areas where the humans had been active. In fact, some of the animals seemed curious about the human presence. Grace here. I think the local animals understand that we're not a threat to them. They might actually help us if we need it. Amy was coordinating the final approach from her position with Jake. She had been studying the fortress's defensive patterns and found something interesting. The pirates were so focused on watching for conventional attacks that they had blind spots in their sensor coverage, blind spots that lined up perfectly with the natural paths through the terrain. Amy to all units. The enemy's attention is focused on areas where they expect normal military tactics. They're not watching the routes we're actually using. At exactly noon, when Xerion 7's environmental conditions were at their most challenging, Jake's team began the final phase of their mission. But instead of launching an assault, they did something that would have baffled military historians throughout the galaxy. They knocked on the front door. Danny approached the fortress's main entrance and activated the communication panel. When Zrakh's face appeared on the screen, Danny smiled and waved. "Hi there," Danny said cheerfully. "We're here about the illegal occupation of this planet. Would you like to surrender peacefully, or should we come back later?" Zrakh stared at the human in disbelief. Behind Danny, he could see the rest of the human team standing casually in the acid rain, apparently unaffected by conditions that would kill most life forms in minutes. "This is impossible," Zrakh said. "You cannot be here. This planet kills everything." "Oh, this place?" Rick stepped up beside Danny. "Yeah, it's a bit rough, but we've camped in worse. You should see Alaska in winter." That was when Sam's trap activated. The fortress's main power generator sparked, flickered, and died as acid rain finally reached its core components. Emergency lighting came on, but half the fortress's systems shut down immediately. "Sir," Zrakh's engineering officer shouted, "main power is down. Life support is switching to backup systems." Tony's work on the communications array chose that moment to show results. The fortress's distress call to pirate headquarters turned into static halfway through the transmission. Communications. "Are failing, sir," the radio operator reported. "We can't reach headquarters." Kate's voice came through Jake's radio. "I count 43 pirates inside the fortress. They're all gathered in the central area. None of them are at defensive positions." Jake stepped forward to join Danny at the communication panel. "Commander?" "Zrakh. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. As you can see, your fortress is experiencing some technical difficulties. We're prepared to offer you and your crew safe passage off Xerion 7 in exchange for your surrender." Zrakh looked around his failing command center. His fortress, built to withstand the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, had been defeated by what appeared to be environmental problems and equipment failures. But he was beginning to understand that these humans had somehow caused every single failure. "How?" Zrakh asked. "How did you survive? How did you do this?" Jake looked confused. "Do what?" "We just camped here for a few days and walked over to talk to you. You turned this planet into a weapon against us." "We didn't turn the planet into anything," Amy said, stepping up to the communication panel. "We just paid attention to how it works and tried not to fight against it." Grace joined the conversation. "Your people tried to control this environment with technology, but environments like this require adaptation and cooperation, not domination." Inside the fortress, Zrakh's lieutenant whispered urgently in his ear, "Sir, our life support systems are failing. We have perhaps 2 hours of breathable air remaining. Our emergency evacuation systems are not functioning." Zrakh realized he had no choice. His crew was going to die if they stayed in the fortress, and they couldn't leave without help. The humans had defeated him not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by understanding something his people had never learned: how to live in harmony with a hostile environment. "We surrender," Zrakh said quietly. 3 hours later, the pirates were secured aboard their own transport ships, under guard by Jake's team. The human soldiers had systematically dismantled the fortress's weapons and communication systems, leaving it harmless but intact. As they prepared to leave Xerion 7, Grace carefully photographed several of the unique plants she had discovered during their stay. Tony collected samples of the glowing minerals for later study. Danny marked the location of the clean water sources they had found in case anyone needed them in the future. "You know," Lisa said as they packed up their campsite, "this wasn't such a bad place once you got used to it." "I'd definitely come back," Sam agreed. "Maybe for a longer camping trip next time." In orbit, Admiral Vextar read Jake's mission report 3 times before accepting that it was real. The humans had conquered the galaxy's most dangerous planet, using skills they had apparently learned during recreational activities in their childhood. The report concluded with Jake's recommendation that Xerion 7 would make an excellent location for Galactic Defense Council survival training exercises, noting that it had good hiking trails and interesting wildlife once you learned how to coexist with the local ecosystem. Admiral Vextar filed the report and made a note in his personal log: "Never underestimate humans. What they call camping, the rest of the galaxy calls impossible." Admiral Sam Carter's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Jake could see other high-ranking officers and what looked like government officials. "Captain Miller, the Earth Council has made their decision," the Admiral said. "We're going to reveal ourselves to the Galactic Council, but we're only going to show them a small part of our capabilities. We want to calm the situation down, not make it worse." Jake felt a cold sensation in his stomach. "Sir, are you sure that's wise? Based on what we've observed, even our basic technology is far beyond what most species have." "That's exactly why we need to be careful," Admiral Carter replied. "Captain Ben Harris will be leading a small fleet to make first contact with the Galactic Council station. You and your crew will be part of that mission. Your experience with alien cultures will be valuable." The transmission ended, leaving Jake and his crew to prepare for what might be the most important moment in human history. 3 days later, they met Captain Ben Harris and his fleet at the edge of human space. Captain Harris was a calm, experienced officer who had spent years commanding exploration missions. His fleet consisted of 3 ships that looked small and simple compared to the massive warships other species used. But Jake knew these ships contained technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "Captain Miller," Harris said during their planning meeting, "your job will be to help with translation and cultural issues. We want to make sure we don't accidentally offend anyone or cause misunderstandings." Dr. Lisa Stone had prepared detailed reports about each species that would be present at the Galactic Council meeting. "Captain Harris, I need to warn you about something. Different species have very different ideas about what military strength means. What we consider a small demonstration might seem like a threat to them." Chief Scientist Amy Clark, who had joined Harris's mission, nodded in agreement. "I've prepared what I think is a very modest display of our technology. Just basic defensive shields, simple communication systems, and standard propulsion. Nothing that should frighten anyone." The journey to the Galactic Council station took 5 days. As they traveled, they could see signs of the galaxy-wide panic everywhere. Military ships patrolled areas that had been peaceful for decades. Several space stations had been abandoned because their populations were afraid of silent watcher attacks. When they arrived at the Galactic Council station, Jake was amazed by what he saw. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for an emergency meeting. The station was surrounded by warships from a dozen different civilizations, all watching each other suspiciously. Captain Harris sent a simple message to the station. "This is Captain Ben Harris of the Earth Exploration Service. We request permission to address the Galactic Council about the situation you call the Silent Watcher crisis." The response came back within minutes. Every species in the galaxy wanted to meet the people who might know something about the mysterious defenders. The meeting took place in the station's largest conference room. Jake had never seen so many different alien species in one place. There were the tall gray Vexani warriors, the peaceful blue-skinned Quinna, the insect-like Rathmore, and dozens of others he recognized from his studies. Captain Harris stood at the center of the room and began to speak. His words were translated into every language present by the station's communication systems. "Members of the Galactic Council, I am Captain Ben Harris of the human species from Earth. We have come here today because we know the truth about the beings you call the Silent Watchers." The room fell completely silent. Jake could feel the tension from every representative present. "The Silent Watchers are not mysterious aliens from unknown space," Harris continued. "They are automated defense systems operated by our species. For over 200 years, humans have maintained peaceful patrol systems throughout this galaxy. These systems are designed to protect innocent travelers and prevent unnecessary conflicts. The reaction was immediate and intense. Several species began shouting questions all at once. Others sat in stunned silence. A few representatives looked like they were preparing to leave the room. Rathmore leader stood up, his insect-like voice clicking with anger. You claim that your species has been secretly controlling galactic security for 2 centuries. This is an act of war against every free civilization. Captain Harris raised his hand for quiet. We have never controlled anything. Our systems only respond when they detect attacks on innocent people or invasions of neutral space. They are purely defensive. Prove it, demanded Zektar, the Vexani war chief who had survived the fleet destruction. Show us this technology you claim is only defensive. Amy Clark stepped forward with her equipment. I will demonstrate our basic defensive capabilities, please observe. She activated a small device that projected an energy shield around the human delegation. Then she showed how their communication systems could translate any language instantly. Finally, she demonstrated their ship's ability to move faster than most species thought possible. The room erupted in chaos. What Amy had intended as a modest demonstration was far beyond anything most species had ever seen. The energy shield was stronger than the armor on most battleships. The translation system was more advanced than the Galactic Council's best computers. The speed demonstration showed that human ships could travel twice as fast as the fastest alien vessels. This is impossible, whispered the Quinna representative. No species could develop such technology without conquering others to obtain resources. How many ships do you have? Demanded the Rathmore leader. Captain Harris tried to calm the situation. The fleet I brought here is just a small patrol group. We have larger ships for exploration and research, but we are not a military species. This answer made things worse instead of better. If what Harris called a small patrol group had technology this advanced, what did their main fleets look like? Jake watched as the representatives began talking among themselves in small groups. Some seemed excited about the possibility of forming an alliance with humans. Others looked terrified about what humanity might do with such advanced technology. A few species were clearly planning to leave the meeting and warn their governments about this new threat. Dr. Lisa Stone, who had been quietly observing the cultural reactions, leaned over to Jake. This is going exactly wrong, she whispered. They're interpreting our defensive technology as proof that we're planning to conquer the galaxy. The Vexani war chief Zektar stood up again. Humans of Earth, your people destroyed my invasion fleet with 3 small ships. You call this defensive, but no defensive system could be so powerful unless it was designed by conquerors. We destroyed nothing, Captain Harris said firmly. Our systems disabled your weapons and sent you home with a warning. If we wanted to conquer, your warriors would not be alive to speak with us today. Then why hide for so long? Asked the Quinna representative. Why watch us in secret if your intentions are peaceful? Captain Harris looked around the room at all the suspicious and frightened faces. Jake realized that no matter what they said, many species would not believe that humans had developed such advanced technology purely for defense. We hid because we wanted to learn about the galaxy before making contact, Harris said. We wanted to understand different cultures and find ways to help when help was needed. We never intended to frighten anyone or cause conflicts. But Jake could see it was too late. The revelation had backfired completely. Instead of calming the galactic crisis, humanity's partial disclosure had made every species more suspicious and afraid than before. As the meeting broke up into arguing groups, Jake knew that everything was about to change for humanity and for the entire galaxy. The legend of the Silent Watchers had been replaced by something potentially much worse, the reality of human technological superiority and the fear of what humans might do with it. The galaxy was burning, and Captain Jake Miller could see it happening from his ship's observation deck. 3 months had passed since the failed meeting at the Galactic Council station. Now dozens of wars were raging across known space. Some species were fighting to capture human technology. Others were trying to destroy Earth before humans could conquer them. The peaceful civilizations were fleeing to the outer edges of the galaxy. Captain, Admiral Carter is calling an emergency meeting. Commander Rick Davis announced. All ship commanders are to report to Earth immediately. Jake sighed as he looked at the stars. Everything had gone wrong so quickly. The partial revelation of human technology had created more fear than the Silent Watcher legends ever did. Now the galaxy saw humans as either saviors or destroyers, with nothing in between. When Jake arrived at Earth's main orbital station, he was surprised to see how many ships were there. The entire human exploration fleet had been recalled home. Military vessels that Jake had never seen before were also present, along with ships from the research and development divisions. Admiral Sam Carter looked older and more tired than Jake had ever seen him. Standing beside the Admiral was Dr. Nina Fox, a cultural specialist Jake had heard about but never met. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. "Captains, we have reached a critical point," Admiral Carter began. "The galaxy is destroying itself because of us. We have 3 choices left. We can hide on Earth and hope the wars end eventually. We can use our military power to force peace on everyone, or we can try something completely different." General Frank Moore, the head of human military forces, stepped forward. He was a big man with gray hair and scars from old battles. "The military option would be simple," he said. "Our defense technology could stop every war in the galaxy within a week. But that would make us the rulers of all known space, whether we want to be or not." Dr. Nina Fox activated a large display showing the current state of galactic conflicts. Red zones marked areas where wars were happening. Yellow zones showed species that were preparing for battle. Only a few small green areas remained peaceful. "Generals and admirals, may I present an alternative?" Dr. Fox said quietly. "Instead of ruling or hiding, we could offer something no one expects. We could give our technology away for free." The room fell silent. Jake could see confusion and surprise on every face. "Explain," Admiral Carter said. "It's called the Integration Protocol," Dr. Fox continued. "We offer to share our defensive technology with any species that agrees to stop fighting and join a new peaceful alliance. The catch is that our technology only works for defense, never for attack. Any species that tries to use it for conquest will find their systems automatically shut down." Captain Ben Harris, who had led the failed diplomatic mission, shook his head. "Dr. Fox, these species already think we're planning to conquer them. Offering them our technology will only make them more suspicious. Not if we do it right," Dr. Fox replied. She changed the display to show her detailed plan. "We don't ask them to trust us. We simply start helping anyone who needs it. When a war breaks out, we appear and make it impossible for either side to fight. When pirates attack traders, we disable the pirates and escort the merchants to safety. When planets are threatened, we provide them with shields they cannot use to attack others." Jake studied the plan carefully. "Dr. Fox, this would require us to reveal our full capabilities to the entire galaxy. No more hiding, no more secrets." "Exactly," she nodded. "The legends and partial truths have failed. Complete honesty might be our only chance to fix this situation." General Moore looked worried. "This plan would put our people at great risk. We would be exposing ourselves to every hostile species in the galaxy." "We're already at risk, Dr. Fox pointed out. "The difference is that this way, we control how the galaxy learns about us instead of letting fear and rumors do it for us." Admiral Carter walked to the large window overlooking Earth. "This is the biggest decision in human history. Are we ready to become protectors of the entire galaxy?" "Sir," Jake said, "may I suggest we start with a test? Pick one conflict and try Dr. Fox's approach. See how it works before we commit to helping everyone." "Good idea, Captain Miller. Which conflict do you recommend?" Dr. Lisa Stone, who had been studying galactic communications, spoke up. "The Vexani are attacking the Quinna homeworld. The Quinna are completely peaceful and have no way to defend themselves. If we help them, we'll be clearly saving innocent lives." 3 days later, General Frank Moore led the largest human fleet ever assembled toward Quinna space. Jake and his crew were part of the mission, along with 50 other ships carrying the most advanced defensive technology humanity had ever built. When they arrived at the Quinna homeworld, they found Zektar's Vexani war fleet surrounding the planet. The blue-skinned Quinna had no military ships at all. Their peaceful society had never built weapons of any kind. "This is General Frank Moore of the Human Defense Fleet," Moore announced on all communication channels. "All hostile actions in this system will cease immediately." Zektar's response came quickly. "Humans, you finally show your true fleet. We will destroy you and take your technology for the Vexani Empire." The Vexani attacked with everything they had. Hundreds of warships fired their most powerful weapons at the human fleet. Jake watched from his bridge as the energy beams and missiles simply disappeared when they hit the human ship's defensive shields. "Return fire?" asked the weapons officer on General Moore's flagship. "Negative," Moore replied calmly. "Disable their weapon systems only. No one dies today." The human response was swift and precise. Invisible energy beams reached out from the human ships and touched every Vexani vessel. Within seconds, every weapon on every enemy ship simply stopped working. Their engines continued running, their life support kept functioning, but they could no longer hurt anyone. "Zektar," General Moore said over the communication system, "your weapons are disabled but your ships are undamaged. You have two choices. Leave this system immediately and never return, or we will transport your crews to the nearest Vexani world and leave your empty ships here as monuments to peace." But instead of the angry response Jake expected, something surprising happened. Zektar's voice came over the communication channel, but it sounded different than before. "General Moore," the Vexani war chief said slowly, "you could have destroyed us completely. Your weapons are clearly powerful enough, but you chose not to kill us, that is correct. When you first defeated my fleet months ago, you also chose not to kill us. And now when we attack you directly, you again choose mercy." There was a long pause. "I do not understand your people." Dr. Nina Fox, who was monitoring the conversation, signaled to General Moore. He nodded and allowed her to speak. "War Chief, Zektar, humans believe that strength should be used to protect life, not destroy it. We have powerful technology because we want to help others, not conquer them. You could rule the entire galaxy with such power," Zektar said. "Rule requires fear and violence," Dr. Fox replied. "We prefer cooperation and friendship, but we will defend innocent people from those who choose violence." What happened next surprised everyone. The Quinna planetary government sent a message thanking the humans and asking if they could learn about human defensive technology. Several smaller species in nearby systems sent similar requests. Even some of Zektar's own officers asked if they could speak privately with human representatives. Over the following weeks, the integration protocol spread across the galaxy faster than the Silent Watcher legends had. Species after species asked to join the new alliance. The agreement was simple. Humans would provide defensive technology and protection to any civilization that agreed to use it only for defense and peaceful purposes. The technology itself enforced the agreement. Human defensive systems would not work for anyone who tried to use them to attack others. Pirates found their stolen human shields useless when they tried to raid merchant ships. Aggressive species discovered that human-provided weapons would only fire at other weapons, never at people or planets. 1 year later, Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of a new type of ship. The USS Harmony was built using technology from 12 different species, all working together under human coordination. Dr. Lisa Stone served as the ship's cultural liaison, helping different species learn to work together. "Captain, we're receiving a message from the Vexani homeworld," the communication officer announced. Jake smiled as Zektar's face appeared on the screen. The former war chief now led the Vexani Peaceful Exploration Service, using human technology to map safe routes through dangerous space. "Captain Miller, my people have found something interesting in the outer rim systems. It appears to be ruins of an ancient civilization. Would your people be interested in a joint exploration mission?" "We would be honored to work with you, Zektar," Jake replied. As the communication ended, Jake looked out at the stars. The galaxy was still full of challenges and mysteries, but for the first time in centuries, different species were facing them together, instead of fighting each other. Dr. Lisa Stone joined him at the observation window. "Captain, I've been thinking about something. Do you think we're still the Silent Watchers?"